What's up, guys? My name is Tai Zen. Welcome to the cryptocurrency.market channel. This is a trading, investing, and entrepreneurship channel. In this video, guys, I want to share with you guys something about mission critical blockchain software. Okay, and before I do, I want to share with you guys a quick story that so it will help you guys understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so in the U.S. in the 1960s, the U.S. space program had an ambitious goal to send a spacecraft out into the farthest edges of our solar system, okay? Because there was going to be a special event in the late 70s where the planets Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter and Pluto, there's like 4 planets that were going to align up at the same time, and it only happens like every 160 years or something like that. And they wanted to send out some spacecrafts and send it out there and to take pictures and measure all the stuff that, you know, astronomers and scientists do. Okay, so I'm not, you know, you guys know that I'm a high school dropout, so I'm not, you know, one of those Asian guys that's good in math and science. Okay, so they're supposed to measure all this stuff to help do research about outer space and astronomy for the U.S. Space program. Okay, and so they started developing these 2 spacecraft called Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. And they launched these 2 spacecrafts in 1977 in America and they were launched like 2 or 3 weeks apart, okay? So both of these spacecrafts went out into space and they were going to, you know, from different angles and different perspectives, measure all the things that happen out in space when these 4 planets line up for the, you know, like every 160 years. Okay, so they started building these spacecrafts and designing it back in the early 60s, and then they finally finished all the hardware and all the software and launched it out into space in 1977. Okay, so if we fast forward to 2017, that's about 40 years. So I'm making this video in 2019, so that's about 42 years. So let's just say over 40 years, just so that for conversation's sake, okay? And when they sent it out there, they took some magnificent photos of space, of the planets aligning, all kinds of beautiful images back to Earth. So that space program that the American taxpayers paid a lot of money for, it was very worth it because the data that was sent back from those 2 spacecraft was just gorgeous. It was just magnificent. Like a lot of things that we see today in a lot of images that you see about astronomy and about space and stuff like that, a lot of it comes from those 2 spacecraft, okay? Now, here's what I want to share with you guys, okay? You guys know that back in the 60s, the computer technology, the computer hardware and software technology back then was very, very basic, very, very elementary. So when they sent these spacecraft up into space, okay, there was very, very little computing power and very little computer hardware and software that was included in this giant spacecraft, okay? My smartphone today, my Samsung or iPhone today, you know, probably has 10,000 times the hardware and software capacity of what was on the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 spacecraft, okay? Now, they were launched over 40 years ago, and their mission was only for a few years. I think like 3, 5, 10 years at most. However, the scientists and the engineers did such a magnificent job on building the spacecraft that it lasted significantly longer than NASA, which is the space agency that's responsible for all these spacecraft in America. It's called NASA. The NASA was able to keep the 2 spacecraft going much longer than anyone had thought. Okay, now when it went out there, one of the things that I want you guys to remember is this: whenever we invest into a blockchain project, we have to ask ourselves, like, is that blockchain software going to be around for 10, 20, 30, 40 years? Is it going to still work the way it was intended? Okay, so let's say Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Tezos, any Dogecoin, any of these blockchains, right? The way that it was designed today, will it continue to work and do what it's supposed to do 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, okay? For example, like when Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin, okay, he intended for it to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash. And we have to ask ourselves, today, is it still a peer-to-peer electronic cash, 10 years later, okay? We have to, each of us has a different view. The Bitcoin Cash and the Bitcoin SV people say that no, it's no longer a peer-to-peer electronic cash. And the Bitcoin Core people say, yes, it still is. We're building this Lightning Network on top of it, and it's supposed to work as an electronic cash, right? So, the people that's on the Bitcoin Core side, they're going to say that they're correct, and then the people on the Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV side, they're going to say that they're the ones that are correct, okay? So we don't know. We don't know. Each one of us has to make a personal decision and make a personal opinion on whether or not the blockchain software that we invested into today or a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago is still the same software that's supposed to do what it's supposed to do today, okay? Now, why am I sharing this with you guys? Why am I talking about software that needs to be mission critical? Okay, mission critical means that it's absolutely life or death. Okay, so for example, if we build software and hardware for a nuclear missile, okay, that is mission critical. If we build software and hardware for a high-speed railway, okay, that is mission critical, because if something goes wrong, lots of people's lives are in danger. Okay, if we build let's say some hardware and software device that we put into somebody else's body to help regulate their heart, their kidneys or whatever organs that's failing, right? That hardware and that software needs to be mission critical. If we have our missile defense system. In each country, they have their own, each country has a missile defense system. Most of the larger countries, right? We want to make sure that the hardware and the software is mission critical, meaning that when it's time to do what it's supposed to do, it needs to do that and not have any mistakes or any flaws in it, okay? Now, I've been wanting to make this video, this mission critical software video for over 2 years now. I keep forgetting, or I don't have time, or for whatever reason. It's usually because I keep forgetting, okay? And I really want to apologize to the Cardano community for making this video so late, okay? Many of you guys know that I'm a big investor into what Charles Hoskinson is doing and his team is doing with the Cardano project, okay? Now, in case you guys don't know, Cardano is a smart contracting platform. So it would be comparable to something, or the people that are in that bucket would be something like Ethereum and Tezos, things like that, right? So when, a lot of people are giving Charles Hoskinson a hard time because, the Cardano project is moving along, like it's inching along, 1 inch at a time, 1 millimeter at a time. And it's not in a rush to do things quickly, right? For example, like the Ethereum project, when they first started, their goal was to, break things fast and move things along and fix it as we go along. But Charles Hoskinson took a different approach. He took a mission critical approach, right? And many of you guys have heard him talk about the formal verification process with Cardano. Many people are jumping on his ass about, oh, why are you getting all these academic people to review the Cardano math and the Cardano software and all this other stuff, and he's taking it to cryptographers so the Cardano cryptography can be challenged by professional cryptographers out there. So they're submitting their process, and this whole thing is called formal verification. Now let me just time out real quick and explain to you guys what the formal verification process is, in case English is not your primary language. Okay, I'm going to keep it as simple as I can because I'm not a computer scientist. Okay, so whenever we put out a specification for a software, right? The engineers or the people who want to build this software will put out this specification, and then the engineers over here will take these specifications and convert it to computer code or software code, and then put it out and then let it run. Okay, now we build software, we build trading software, so we create the specifications that we want. Hey, we want the software to do this, enter trades like this for us, exit trades like this for us, and then we hire engineers, back-end engineers to create the we write the specifications and the logic that we want, and then the back-end engineers, software engineers, take the specifications that we have, and they go and they write the code for it, and then we're hoping that, hey, that code works out so that when we trade, right, when we automate some of our trades, right, that the trades come out correctly. Okay, so that's how software is built. Software is built where somebody, an individual or an organization, will put out a list of specifications, and the software engineers over here go write the code to be able to accomplish and do these tasks or these specifications. Okay, now a lot of the blockchain software companies out there, they just do this. Okay, they say, hey, we want this smart contracting platform to do this, do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, M, N, O, and then do all these features, and then they go write the code for it, and then they put it out in the market, and they let the users use the software, and then if there's a problem or there's a bug or there's a hack, then the engineers go back and then they try to figure out where the bug or the hack occurred, and then they try to fix it. And then they also offer bounties for people to fix. Now, the formal verification, and so that is kind of like an informal verification process. And in case English is not your primary language, verification means to verify or to make sure that it's true and it's correct and it's accurate. Okay, so that's what verification means. So what happens is when we do that, that is not very mission critical software. Like when you look at these software projects that do not do formal verification, right, or have efforts to do formal verification in their blockchain software, you have to ask, like, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if that blockchain was used for something that's mission critical, will it still work? Will it still perform the way it was intended? Okay, and there's no way for us to know because there's so many different variables that will happen a year later, 10 years later, 20 years later. So the only way that we can determine that the software is as accurate as it can be that we know of is to take the specifications that that we have for the software, and we take the actual software code itself, right, and we convert both of these to mathematical proofs, okay, to math, and then we use math to confirm that this is accurate and this is accurate, and hopefully the math on both of those, the software specifications and the actual code itself, the software code, they line up and they match. Okay. Now keep in mind, guys, I'm not a computer scientist, so what I just explained to you is like the most basic way to understand how software verification or software formal verification works. Okay, so if I have it wrong, please don't jump on my ass and hey Ty, you're not a computer scientist. I already told you I'm not a computer scientist. Okay, I'm a trader. Okay, I know how to make money from the blockchain software. I don't know how to write the code or how to verify any of that. There's people like Charles Hoskinson that does. Okay, so I'll leave it up to them. Okay, so whenever you guys invest into a blockchain software, you got to constantly ask yourself, hey, I invest into this, and especially if you're investing into the blockchain software for a long term, like myself, like I'm investing into Ethereum, into Cardano, into Tezos, and projects like that for the long term, right? So what happens is I want to make sure that 10, 20 years from now, the software still works. okay? And the only people that I see that is doing that heavily, okay, for the last few years in crypto history is Cardano. And Charles Hoskinson and the Cardano project are getting a lot of heat and are getting a lot of criticism for, you know, going through this formal verification process. And you guys have to understand this, okay? When you build software for the military, for hospitals, for you know, the power grid and places like that, they are going to require formal verification, because when missiles need to fly, when the city's electricity and power relies on your software and things like that, they want to know that it's going to work, and they're going to want to know that under, you know, mission critical environments that the software still works. Okay, so whenever you hear all these idiots and all these dumbasses criticize Charles Hoskinson and the Cardano project for taking their time, going through the formal verification process, okay, to make sure that their cryptography, their software code, their proof of stake, everything in their software is working correctly, you know, be grateful that we have someone like a Charles Hoskinson who understands computer science, who understands the formal verification process, who is way better than me in math and science, so that they build a blockchain software that we can rely on. Imagine if you build something on top of the Cardano network, and then 10 years later you find out that the Cardano network doesn't do what it's supposed to do. How would you feel then? Let me share a quick story with you guys, okay? On top of the Voyager, let's go back to the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 missions that NASA sent out into space, okay? So it was only supposed to last a few years. And after they finished recording and doing all the research and all the experiments inside the solar system, they were done with their mission. That was what they were sent out into space to do. But after they were done, all the equipment on the Voyager 1 spacecraft and the Voyager 2 spacecraft was still functioning. The engineers did such a magnificent job on it that the thing still works. It still has power. It's, all the instruments on there still work and everything. Yeah. Okay. And what happened was that when they did that, right? When they did that, they were able to extend the mission life of the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. So they sent it out beyond into interstellar space, beyond the solar system. Okay. Now, what's interesting here to note is this, guys. What's interesting to note is this, is that when they went out into 40 years later, right? It's gone out so far. It's gone, I think, like 100. It's like 12 billion miles away from the Earth now, and that's like 137 astronomical units, and each astronomical unit is the distance between the Earth and the Sun, and that's a long distance already. So these things are way out there, okay? And what happened was some of the instruments started, you know, to die off because over the years it's degraded. You know, the cold, the heat, the radiation out in space has deteriorated the scientific instruments on this spacecraft. And what happened is, as the spacecraft gets older and older and it ages, some of the instruments start to die off. However, the primary instruments, such as the particle instruments, the magnetic instruments on there to measure the magnetic waves and the particle that's floating out there in space, those things are still working. And recently, there's big news in the news about the Voyager 1 spacecraft, because one of the things that they have to do is the big old dish antenna that's on the spacecraft itself, they have to aim that at the Earth so that when it transmits signals and data back to the Earth can pick it up. It's so far, I mean, 12 billion miles is a long distance, okay? And so it has these tiny rocket engines called thrusters on the spacecraft, so that when they fire up, right, they can orient the satellite dish to aim it at the Earth, so that, hey, can you close the refrigerator, Thina? Thina. so that they aim the antenna at the Earth so that it can still transmit data to the Earth, okay? Now, the primary thrusters, now this is important that you aim the antenna at the Earth all the time so that the Earth can receive the messages or data from the spacecraft, right? And what happened was the primary thrusters, for whatever reason, malfunctioned on the Voyager 1 spacecraft. And so 40 years later, they had to fire up and start the thrusters, the backup thrusters, for the first time in 40 years. In over 40 years, these thrusters have been lying dormant, okay? This piece of hardware and the software that allows the thrusters to work, to fire and realign the antenna. Now keep in mind this too, guys. 12 billion miles away, whenever you send, like when the people on Earth in America send a signal to the spacecraft to tell it, hey, shut down your primary thrusters and activate your secondary, your backup thrusters, right? This is not something that you just hit the start button on Earth and then you see it on the computer screen like a video game, okay? You hit the start button or you send the commands to the spacecraft, and you might have to wait, you know, several minutes or hours for the signal to get to the spacecraft, and then the spacecraft do what it's supposed to do and send the confirmation signal back to Earth before the scientists can, you know, so you have to sit there and wait. Like, it's not like 10 minutes, it's like, I think, several hours, right? And so you're sitting there, you tell the spacecraft, hey, turn off your primary thrusters, and then do all the checkups, and then turn on your backup thrusters, and make sure that you aim the antenna this way. So all these instructions are going to the spacecraft, right? And the scientists are sitting here, holding their breath, waiting, hoping that what they built back in the 1960s, over 40 years ago, is still going to work today. Okay, so in November 2017, they went through all these procedures, right? A very, very meticulous procedure to send the signals to shut off the primary thrusters and activate the backup thrusters. And guess what? The backup thrusters worked. They worked after 40 years of being dormant and have never been activated. Why? Because the engineers that built the spacecraft did such a magnificent job that the backup thrusters that's been laying there inactive for 40 years came to life and was able to realign the antenna to continue its mission. And because of that, the Voyager 1 spacecraft was able to continue its mission for several more years, because now they can aim the antenna and make sure that they can send the data and receive commands from the Earth, okay? And they're projecting that this will help, and they've also shut down a few other instruments that like the heat and all kinds of stuff because once the Voyager spacecraft run out of electricity, run out of power, once the batteries die down, then there's nothing left. It doesn't matter how good the instruments are. If there's no energy to power them, then they're not going to work, okay? And the NASA engineers are hoping that they can extend, by shutting down some of the non-essential instruments, they can extend the life of the Voyager spacecraft and their research mission until the year 2025, and hopefully till the year 2027, which would be like the 50-year anniversary of the spacecraft, okay? So why am I sharing this with you guys? Why am I sharing this with you guys, okay? Think about that for a moment. If things are built, I'll have to fix it later, sweetheart. Okay, I need some tools to fix it, okay? So imagine this, guys. Imagine if we built something on top of the Ethereum network. Imagine, let's say that you built remember guys, Ethereum, Tezos, Cardano, they're all smart contract platforms. And what that essentially means is that they are platforms where you can put conditional statements on there, okay? Meaning that if this happens, do this. If this happens, if A happens, do B. If C happens, do D. Okay, that's what a smart contract platform is. It's just you're putting in a bunch of conditional statements, and when these things match up or they happen, then the contract, the network is going to perform that action that you ask it to do. So, for example, I'm just going to make up a scenario here. Okay, let's say, for example, that I'm not sure if my kids are going to be a good investor or a good steward of the money that I leave them. So let's just say that I create a contract or an app or a software on top of the Ethereum or the Cardano or the Tezos network, and I say, okay, you know what? My kids are 5 years old right now. When they reach 20 years from now, 15 years later, right? If my kids have a college degree, or they have, if they graduate from any of these colleges, I want you, the network, to ping. I write the software, and it pings let's say, all the college databases, all the military college databases, and all the schools. And if my kid's name and national ID number show up in there as a graduate of that college, then release 10% of the money that is being held inside this smart contract. Okay, and let's just say that I die before these things get executed, and 15 years later, right? Let's say that my kids do graduate from college, and the network is able to ping the database and of the college databases, and they see that my kids did indeed, and it meets all the criteria, all the conditions that I set out years ago, and now it won't release the funds to my kids. Now, to think about that for a moment. Do you want that to happen? Do you want the software to do that? Okay? Because there's some kind of error, there's some kind of a bug, or some kind of, something's wrong with the software, and it won't do what it was intended to do. Okay? So now, that has me worried. Like if people are going to build all these softwares and all these applications on top of the Cardano network or the Ethereum network, how trustworthy is that? For example, right? You guys know that Vitalik, he wrote the white paper for the Ethereum network and everything, but you guys know that it's actually Dr. Gavin Wood who wrote the yellow paper and actually wrote the code for Ethereum. Okay, he's the main guy that wrote most of the code for Ethereum. Okay, so let's just so you guys, in case you guys was not aware of it. Okay, we're not aware that it's actually Dr. Gavin Wood, from the Polkadot project. Okay, now keep in mind this, guys. So Dr. Gavin Wood is not a dummy. He's not an idiot like me. Okay, he's one of the most hardcore blockchain computer scientists, engineers that you're ever going to meet. He's at the top of the game. He's at the, him and Charles Hoskinson, all these guys, they're at the top of their game, And he wrote a smart contract on top of the Ethereum network, just a multi-signature wallet to store the Ether tokens that he raised from the Polkadot ICO. And the contract got hacked, and there was some kind of bug in it. Somebody went in there and messed with it, and now it froze $150 million worth of Ethers inside that contract, and it's stuck there. It's frozen there, and no one can do anything about it, right? So imagine, would you want that to happen to your application when you build it on top of Ethereum, when you build it on top of Cardano, when you build it on top of any smart contract platform, okay? So whenever you hear these dumbasses out there criticize Charles Hoskinson and the Cardano team for being slow, for not moving fast enough, for going through too much, they call it academics, right? Keep in mind, guys, this is the formal process in which your software gets verified to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. So whenever you guys hear these idiots out there that don't understand software development and the formal verification process, okay, just ignore that noise, because they're a bunch of idiots that don't know what the hell they're talking about. They can't see into the future 10, 20, 30, 40 years into the future and think of, they don't have a mindset for mission critical software. The reason why our team invested into Charles Hoskinson and the Cardano project was because we saw, okay, because our team members are software engineers. They're software developers, right? So they understand that if you build software that in which you are not going to be around, 40 years from now or 50 years from now, we want to make sure that you know how to build software, or at least you make an effort and an attempt to build the software and go through a formal verification process where your software gets challenged, where your math gets challenged, where your cryptography gets challenged by other professionals to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. Okay? So whenever you guys think of Cardano, when I think of Cardano, I'm thinking of mission critical software. And when you look at other blockchain projects, you have to ask yourself, is that blockchain project, is that mission critical software? 40 years from now, when the backup engines need to be turned on, will they turn on? Think about that, guys. Will they turn on? Okay? If they won't, then why are you investing money into it? Why are you putting money into it? Okay? Now, does this mean that the Cardano network or the Cardano software is not going to have bugs or other issues with it? No, that doesn't mean that it's going to be bug free. All software has bugs in it, but we want them to at least, we want the engineers and the team to at least go through a formal verification process that has been accepted as an industry standard. Okay? It cracks me up when you have blockchain projects out there laugh at the Cardano team for going through a formal verification process. And think about that, guys. These guys want to build software that still runs 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, but they are not willing to go through the formal verification process that all mission critical software needs to go through, right? And on top of that, they're laughing about it. Now think about how stupid that is, guys. Think about how stupid it is when you know that we're going to send a multi-$100 million spacecraft out into space, and all the engineers say on the project say, hey, you know what? We got to go through a formal verification process to make sure that all these components work on the spacecraft before we send it out into space. Because once we send it out, we can't touch it no more. We can't fix it. There's nothing we can do. Whatever we send out into space, that's it. It's got to work. Okay? It's got to work. We can't make up excuses once we send it out into space. Okay? So imagine your software being like the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. When we send it out there into cyberspace, will it work? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now? Will it still work? Will it still do what it's supposed to do? Okay? So I hope that this video, guys, helps you guys understand the mission critical verification, the formal verification process that Charles Hoskinson and his team is going through with the Cardano project, okay, and why they're taking their time to submit their code, their math, their cryptography to other professionals that's outside of the blockchain space to examine it, review it, challenge it. If you don't have peer review of what the math that you are trying to build and create, right, then there's no way that they can be a mission critical software. Okay, now since Tezos came out, that's another one of the other reasons, right? Besides it being underpriced and undervalued, that's another primary reason why I'm also invested into the Tezos project, because they're one of the few other projects that constantly talks about formal verification. If you invest heavily into a coin that does not talk about formal verification, then that lets you know their engineering team does not even consider it, does not know about it, or is just not aware of it, or doesn't even care about it. Okay, now do I invest my money and trade coins that do not go through the mission critical formal verification process? Absolutely. Okay, absolutely I do. Okay, but I distinguish those from the ones that do. The ones that go through a mission critical formal verification process, right? So that I know that the software is at a mission critical grade of performance, then I will put a little bit more into it. But the ones that do not talk about the formal verification, or just laugh about it or laugh it off, then I just put a little bit less into it, and it's short term. Like that's not something that I plan on leaving to my kids. That's something that I plan on making the money in my lifetime, spending the profits, using the profits, and even using some of that profit to buy the tokens that are formally verified. So coins such as Cardano, such as Tezos, things like that, I plan on leaving to my kids for the next generation, because I don't need the money from it in my lifetime, okay? But I'm gonna leave that to my kids. And because, why? Because the developers of those projects constantly talk about how they're taking their software through a formal verification process so that it is not just a regular software, but it's a mission critical software, okay? I hope that this video helps you guys understand the seriousness and the value and the importance of having a blockchain software still perform and do what it's supposed to do 50 or 100 years from today, okay? If it doesn't, then we're gonna be in a lot of trouble, okay? And be careful about investing in software that does not that does not show signs that it's gonna perform and do the same thing 10, 20, 50 years from now, okay? If you like what I've shared with you and you like our approach in how we look at cryptocurrency projects and how we invest into it and the process in which we do it to create life-changing profits that allowed us to retire early, okay? Go get you a copy of the cryptocurrency investing blueprint at www.cryptocurrency.market/blueprint. Get you a copy of it there, and it will help you shortcut your way to cryptocurrency investing success. Follow me on Twitter at HeyTaiZen, and I will look forward to seeing you guys in a future video. Thank you. And again, I apologize to the Cardano community. You know, I've been a Cardano holder for several years now, and I've been meaning to make this mission critical software video for at least 2 years now. Okay, just keep forgetting or not having time or not in the right place and time. But I figured today, while we're vacationing here in Bangkok, figure I'll have the time, okay? So thank you for checking out this video, and I will see you guys in a future video.